Good morning. This is Sunrise, where we read a chapter a day. And we have been going through the book of Ezekiel. And actually, this week we bring to an end the entire book. Now, as the book comes to an end, Ezekiel once again is in a vision, just like he was in the earlier chapters. But this vision is not a vision about judgment, as we had seen earlier. This is a vision about restoration. Now, Ezekiel is at this time 50 years old because this is 25 years since he went to captivity. So he is no longer a young man. He has been prophesying for the last 20 years. You remember he started when he was 30. And what he sees in this particular vision is actually a restoration of things that God had taken away. He sees, to start with, in chapter 43, the glory of God comes back to the temple that he has already seen in a vision, the building of the same. So the glory of God comes and it is restored in the temple. Apart from the glory of God, the altar also is restored in the temple. The priests are also restored, plus their priestly duties. You remember we had said much earlier, priestly duties had been removed. The temple was burnt down when the lad fell to captivity. But at this particular time, there is restoration of the temple worship. There's a restoration of the priests. There is a restoration of the altar. The only difference this particular time is that it's not every priest who is actually restored back to the presence of God. We are told that there are many priests. Most of the priests were to be what you'd call today watu wa mkono. They'll just be working outside of the most holy place. The only family that will be working in the most holy place is the family of Zadok, the priest. Zadok was a very good priest during the reign of King David, all the way to the reign of his son, King Solomon. And it seems as if when the rest of the priests were desecrating the temple and they took off and left the temple, the Zadok family guarded the temple, they guarded the altar. And so they are rewarded. This family of Zadok is actually rewarded, which actually tells us that God is not unjust. He doesn't forget the good work that we do. The other thing we also see in these restorations is just the fact that God is not just about judgment. Judgment is not an end in itself, in as far as God's arithmetics are concerned. It's a means to an end. Judgment is a means to an end. And as the book comes to an end, it is very clear that now it is time for restoration. The punishment is over. The captivity will be coming to an end. Although it is still going to take about 40 more years for it to come to an end, but God is already talking about restoration of the nation. And it is not just about the temple and the altar and the temple worship that has been restored at this particular time. Even the land, surprisingly enough, the land is restored. And the way the land is restored, it is not just Judah. The nation of Judah comprised of the tribe of Judah and the Benjamin. But at this particular time, it is the entire Israel as a nation that is being restored back to the land that they occupied before actually the division of the nation into two nations. So all the tribes are accounted for, all the tribes are given land, and Ezekiel is shown the exact boundaries that the land will pass through. Now, there's a lot of similarity at this time between this book and the book of Exodus, where the worship, the priestly worship is instituted, where there is a deliverance of the nation of Israel from Egypt to the promised land, where the Torah, the law, is given. It seems as if Ezekiel is actually taking the nation back to those days when they left Egypt on their way to Canaan. So in other words, he is prophesying of another Exodus from Babylon back to Judah, where the nation will be fully restored. Now, an amazing thing happens in chapter 47, where there is a river. There's a river flowing from the restored temple, from the restored altar, from the restored priestly worship in the temple. There is a flow of a river that keeps growing bigger and bigger, and this river gives life to that which did not have life before, that which was dead before. So once it drains to the ocean, which was salty, the salt disappears, the ocean becomes fresh water, and it just teems with a lot of living creatures, the fish and all that. And where the river is passing, there are trees growing, the fruits gives life, the leaves give life. It is a life-giving river. And what God is telling Israel, when the worship is restored, there will be life. There will be life flowing from the temple. There will be life-giving flow. In fact, it takes us back to the Garden of Eden, because in the Garden of Eden, if you remember in Genesis chapter 2, there is a river that again divides into 4 streams, and wherever it goes, there's a lot of life. So, in other words, things are being restored to the original status. And that's why we are saying God is not a God of judgment alone, and judgment is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end, to make things better. So the nation at this time, and especially because there is not going to be any other prophetic voice until much later, at the time they are going back to Jerusalem, for the next about 40 years, there's going to be prophetic silence as far as prophecy is concerned. But the nation is left at a very good point where there is hope that they are going to go back to Jerusalem, to Judah. They are going to go back and be restored to their land. They are going to be restored back to the temple worship, and all that. The priests are going to be restored. And I think this is a book that gives a lot of hope in the midst of the judgment that we have talked about in the previous chapters. The book ends with a lot of hope. It gives a lot of hope. And you see the difference between some of the prophecies we receive today and the kind of prophecy that Ezekiel, as well as the other prophets, give, in that today we hear prophets who just prophesy doom. But for Ezekiel, as indeed even other prophets, they end with a lot of hope, because God is a God of hope. God had already told this community that he has good plans for them. The plans he has for them is to give them hope, is to give them future. That's the same community that he told that in the book of Jeremiah. And now that good plans, actually, Ezekiel reveals. And so I do not know what you may be going through today. I do not know in your walk with God, where you may feel sometimes today you are at, whether you feel as if you are being judged or whether you feel you're going through a very hard time. But I would like to leave you with this word, that God is a God of hope. God is a God of good plan. God is a God of the future. And for sure, he will come through for us. He will come through for us as a church. He will come through for us as individuals, as families, because God restores. God restores things to the beautiful way that they were originally. So thank you very much for having gone through this book, and I pray that this week, as you conclude the last 7 chapters, that God will really reveal himself to you, and especially as far as giving hope and a future and a good plan is concerned. So thank you very much for having been with us, with myself, Pastor Kingsley, and Pastor Dave, as we have taken you through this book of Ezekiel, and especially for reading it through. I really pray that you have been blessed, even as you finish the next 7 chapters. May you be blessed, and may God reveal his plan for you, that good plan that he has, the hope and the future that he talked about to this community, and now which Ezekiel is bringing back to life. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Have a good week. Thank you.